Here is a number: 21 miles. That is the width, at its narrowest, of a gap of water between Iran and Oman, narrower than many of the cities you have driven across. And through it passes about 1/5 of all the oil the world burns every single day. For 40 years, this strip of sea was the global economy's favorite ghost story. Every few years, someone threatened to close it, traders held their breath, headlines warned of a historic oil spike, and then nothing happened. It never actually closed. Not once. Markets learned to shrug. Then, in 2026, the ghost story came true. For the first time in its history, the Strait of Hormuz effectively shut. And the world got a live, dated demonstration of how a shipping lane you will never see reaches directly into your wallet. We do not have to guess anymore. We ran the experiment. In the next few minutes, I will walk you through exactly what happened, link by link, from one narrow channel to the price of oil to the number on the pump. And here is the part that should stop you. You almost certainly do not buy a single drop of oil from this strait. You paid for it anyway. Start with what makes this one line so important. In 2024, roughly 20 million barrels of oil moved through the Strait of Hormuz every day. About 15 million barrels of crude and another 5.5 million of refined products like diesel and jet fuel. You will hear many different fractions thrown around, so let me be precise because the denominator matters. That 20 million barrels is about 1/5, around 20% of all the petroleum the world consumes. But look only at the oil that travels by ship, and Hormuz is about 1/4 of all seaborne oil trade. And it is not only oil. Roughly 1/5 of the world's liquefied natural gas passes through here too, most of it from Qatar. 3 numbers, 3 meanings. Keep them separate and you already understand this better than most. Where does it go? Overwhelmingly east. About 84% of the crude heads to Asia, and just 4 countries, China, India, Japan, and South Korea, take roughly 69% of everything that flows through. The United States pulls only about 500,000 barrels a day from here, around 7% of its crude imports. Hold on to that 7%. It is the key to the whole story. So, the obvious question, if this one channel is so critical, why not simply route around it? The geography is the problem. The strait is about 21 miles wide, but ships cannot use all of it. The actual lanes are only about 2 miles across in each direction, with a thin buffer between. The whole world's oil, in effect, moving nearly single file. There are bypass pipelines. Saudi Arabia has one running west to the Red Sea, and the Emirates have one reaching the coast at Fujairah on the far side of the peninsula. They are real and they matter. But here is the nuance almost everyone misses. Most of that pipeline capacity is already in use every day for normal exports. The capacity that is actually spare, that could absorb Hormuz's barrels in a crisis, is small. The Energy Information Administration puts it around 2.6 million barrels a day. The International Energy Agency, more generous at 3.5 to 5.5 million. Set that against the roughly 20 million barrels flowing through the strait. Best case, the pipelines rescue somewhere between 15 and 28%. Call it a quarter. The other 3/4 has nowhere to go. That is what makes this a true choke point, and not just a busy road. Now, here is the part that surprises people. The mechanism at the heart of everything. To shut down the Strait of Hormuz, you do not have to sink a single tanker. You just have to make it too dangerous to insure. Every supertanker sails on insurance, cover against damage to the ship, and cover against war risk. It is invisible, it is boring, and it is the master valve of global trade. When the threat rises, war risk premiums climb. In calm times, insuring a crossing might cost about 1/8 of 1% of the value of the ship's hull. In a crisis, that can jump to 0.2 or 0.4% for a single passage. And there is a harder switch behind it. The insurers can simply withdraw cover altogether. When they do, a tanker owner faces a choice: sail an uninsured ship worth hundreds of millions of dollars into a live conflict, or stay in port. Almost every owner stays in port. And this is the crucial point. The water can remain legally open. The lane is right there. But if no one will insure the journey, the traffic stops anyway. You do not close a strait with mines and missiles. You close it with a spreadsheet. For 40 years, that was all theory. In 2026, it became fact. I am going to keep this strictly to the economics and stay out of the politics of who did what. In late February 2026, a wider conflict in the region spilled directly onto the water. Vessels were attacked, mines were laid, and from around the 5th of March, war risk insurers withdrew their cover. Most shipping simply stopped crossing. Producers around the Gulf, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, began shutting in production because oil you cannot ship is oil you cannot sell. Global oil supply fell by about 10 million barrels a day in March, the biggest sudden drop since the pandemic. And oil, remember, is a single global price, so the whole world's oil repriced at once. Brent crude had started the year around $61 a barrel. By the middle of March, it pushed past $100 for the first time in 4 years, peaking near $126. Across March alone, it rose about 65%, $46 a barrel in a single month, the largest monthly jump ever recorded. The World Bank and the International Energy Agency called it the largest disruption to world energy supply since the 1970s. And this was first a human event. Lives were lost at sea, and thousands of sailors were stranded on ships that could not move. We should not lose that in the numbers. To understand why 2026 mattered, you have to understand why every warning before it was ignored. Because this strait has been threatened again and again and again. In the 1980s, during the war between Iran and Iraq, the so-called tanker war saw hundreds of ships attacked over 8 years, and still the strait never fully closed. In 2011 and 2012, Iran threatened to shut it, and oil rose only a couple of percent before fading. In 2019, tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman, and prices ticked up just 3 or 4%. And here is the one that really taught markets to relax. In June of 2025, Iran's parliament actually voted, in an advisory motion, to close the strait after American strikes. And oil did not spike. It fell around 7% as traders read the moment as de-escalation. A vote to close the world's most important oil choke point, and the price went down. That is why, for decades, the smart money reflex was to yawn at every Hormuz headline. Threats were not closures. The boy had cried wolf so many times that no one believed the wolf was real, right up until 2026, when the threat came true, and prices did not move a few percent. They roughly doubled. The lesson is not that every scare is a catastrophe. It is the opposite. Most are noise, until the rare one that isn't. So let us bring it all the way home, to you. This is where a shipping lane thousands of miles away becomes a line on your budget. When crude roughly doubled, the fuels made from it followed, and some rose even faster. By the end of March 2026, the average gallon of gasoline in the United States hit nearly $4, about $3.99, and diesel reached around $5.40, both multi-year highs. And diesel is the one that reaches everything. It moves the trucks, the trains, the ships, and the tractors. So when diesel rises, the cost of hauling every product on a shelf rises with it. Grocery prices, delivered goods, almost anything that has to travel quietly gets more expensive. It reaches your borrowing costs too. As energy prices jumped, so did fears of inflation. The European Central Bank paused its planned interest rate cuts in March and raised its inflation outlook. When central banks turn nervous about inflation, the cheaper money everyone was waiting for gets delayed, and mortgage and loan costs stay stubbornly high. And now the punchline. Remember, the United States pulls only about 7% of its crude from this strait. Americans do not, in any real sense, drink Hormuz oil, and they paid the full price of the shock anyway, at the pump, at the checkout, and in the interest on their debt. That is the whole point of a choke point. You do not have to be its customer to be its hostage.
Now, a word on the present, the one part of this story still moving as you watch. As of early July 2026, the strait is not shut, but it is not fully healed either. After a memorandum between the United States and Iran in mid-June began winding down the blockade, tankers started returning, but slowly, at roughly 35 crossings a day, against a normal range of about 80 to well over 100. The price tells the same fragile story. Brent had averaged around $85 a barrel in June. It fell below $70 on the 1st of July as peace hopes grew, then jumped back near $78 after fresh attacks on vessels in early July and after Washington moved to tighten Iran's export access again. Reopening, but not resolved. The insurers are watching, the mines have not all been cleared, and the mechanism we just walked through is primed to fire again the moment confidence breaks, which is exactly why the lesson outlasts the headline.
So step back and hold the whole chain in one frame. A gap of water about 21 miles wide, 1/5 of the world's oil moving nearly single file. Insurers who can close the lane without firing a shot. A single global price that resets the instant supply is threatened. And at the far end of it all, a gas pump, a grocery receipt, and a central bank deciding whether it can still afford to cut rates. That is what a choke point really is. A place small enough to close and important enough that closing it moves the entire world's money, including yours, even if not one drop of that oil was ever headed to you. For 40 years, the world was lucky and mistook luck for safety. 2026 was the reminder that the modern economy runs on a handful of narrow physical points, and whoever can threaten one holds quiet leverage over everyone's wallet. One last note. This is an explanation of how the system works, not financial advice and not a prediction of what oil does next. And there is a twist to that question. The same shock that sent prices soaring may now be setting up the opposite problem. Too much oil, not too little. That is the story we tell next, how a shortage can flip into a glut, and why prices could fall as fast as they rose. Subscribe, and I will see you there. This has been Money and Power Explained. Follow the money. It always leads to power.